Evening, folks. Thanks for coming in. Hope you have all had a good weekend and the weather's been kind to you, unlike it's been up here. We're back to usual grey, rain, cloudy, stuff like that. But anyway, tonight I'm joined with brand new guests, fresh, new meat, new fresh blood. I'm joined by Poppy, and I'm going to get your name wrong, dog. Rowena. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
Is
right.
that right? That's good.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's a
Let's
wee
go.
brownie point for me, isn't it? From Paranormal Project, CWM. Do you pronounce the letters or is there a quim mark?
It's an actual place. It's called Cwm, and
Right,
it means
but
valley in Welsh.
see, when I first saw your name, I thought it would you were for Cwmbran.
There's quite a few Cwms around. There's like Cwm Tulare, Cwmbran, but we are just valley. That's all we are. We're just valley.
Right, because I had friends years ago who stayed in Cwmbran, and it was beautiful. Wales is beautiful.
Wales is beautiful.
There's our Craig, he's one of ours, and
Hi,
right,
hi everyone.
oh, that's Rigger from SPIG, Scotland Paranormal Investigations Group. He's one we're quite close with him. Damon, I hate to say Rigger's a good friend of ours. Do you know what I mean? He's from Glasgow. He was myself, but he's not exactly the full shoving. You know what I'm saying? But nice enough. He was actually my best man at my wedding last year, but you know, I couldn't find anybody else to do it, so I can't him. I'm only kidding.
He was a short straw.
Aye, you get the short straw. So how are you, ladies?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. We've been very, very busy the last few weeks. Well, the last few months.
Just even today.
So how did the Paranormal Project come about? Whose brainchild was it?
That's me. I'm the founder. So I've had a lot of experiences within my life since I was a young child, and I've always had a massive interest in the paranormal. And one day I was literally just sat on my floor and I had a brainstorm and I thought, why can't I put together a paranormal group? We have got so much history. We've got so many stories within just a little village in this tiny little bubble in South Wales. Why can't I put something together? Nobody else has. So I thought, first time for everything. Let's get on with it. Let's do it. And I just made the Facebook group. Honestly, I made the whole group within an hour. I brainstormed it for an hour and I just did it. And then I started putting out adverts to find people that could help me or had a bit more experience or a bit more knowledge. And one of the posts that I put out was for a paranormal historian, someone to help me research. And then Rowena come along.
Me.
So sorry, Poppy, you go.
So after that, then it was just one person after another person. And we're so blessed as well that we've got Ghostwatch Wales, who are sort of our co-joined with us. And Gethin from Ghostwatch Wales is such a valuable, knowledgeable man. He knows everything from UFOs to, I don't know, just all these ghostly experiences and hauntings and places he's been, and he's got decades and decades of experiences. So he's sort of mentoring us in a way with our investigations and sort of helping us along. And he's got the full range of kit that he's like, go on, help yourself. You know, that's always handy to have that.
And that saves quite a wee bit of money. So, Rory, you're the history side there.
Yeah, so I actually saw Poppy's advert on Facebook. I'm not actually in Cwm or in Wales. I'm in Somerset, in England.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're not too far away. We're about 2.5 hours away from each other, I think.
Probably about that, yeah.
And the clacking on the background, that's my dog, by the way. I'm really sorry. He's clacking on the lino.
Oh, that's fine. So, your dog's in his bed.
In case you can hear weird clicking noises, that's not me, that's him. So I answered the advert. I am an I am an historian anyway. I've always had a bit of an interest in the paranormal. And I thought, well, this looks like an interesting challenge. Why not? And Poppy and I hit it off. I reckon we were probably talking nearly every day after about a week and a half of knowing each other. And now I do consider her one of my best friends, which is very nice to get to work with my best friend. So we just clicked, and we had quite a lot of similar experiences, as well as a lot of very, very different ones. I mean, some of what Poppy's experienced in her life, I'm grateful to say, with regards to the paranormal, I'm grateful to say I've never had those experiences, some sort of the more negative experiences. So it's been fascinating to get to know someone else's stories, and then the group, like Poppy says, the group expanded, and we've managed to get some really amazing people on board who have got so much enthusiasm for what they're doing and so much knowledge, and they're just one of the most enthusiastic teams I think you could wish for. And I think Poppy might be the only one who's actually based in Cum.
Yeah, it is. It's just me. Yeah, I've just realised that. Yeah.
There's our Laura. Sorry, that's our Laura. It's Craig's other half. She's one of yours and one of your besties as well. And that's Craig's wife. But no, it's you're saying there, Poppy. You'd an idea in your head, and you thought, you know what, I'm going to just go with it and see what happens. That's quite similar to how we started. You know, my wife, she's a history buff, and I'm kind of, don't get me wrong, I love history as well. But I've always been into the paranormal, and we started PIH back 2020, and we didn't have a clue what we were doing. You know, it was Sarah put the Facebook page together. It was ex-friends who suggested, why don't you start a group? Why do you talk? Well, never done it before, but it was during the pandemic. We thought, we'll give it a bash and see what happens. We thought we'd only last about a month, because none of us had a clue what we were doing. What have you been told about advertising? I'm Craig, right? Sorry, the kind of name gives it away, Laura. Last name, surname. But it's good when you start off. You don't know what you're doing. You're not sure what you're doing, but then you meet people who have got experience in history and paranormal that kind of come on board and give you advice and give you. I believe that we should all just follow our own path. If you get any ideas, just go with it. But it's good to have that wee bit of backup.
I think it's really, really important to have a diverse team and to also have somebody that is capable and has the knowledge of history and to research history, because it's all well and good going into a place, but then you want to be able to find that correlation between history and what you're finding. And anyone can research Google, but Google doesn't always have all the facts. Google doesn't have all the correct information. I've heard teams go, oh, we just Google it. We don't need a historian, we just Google it. And to me, I just think I don't want to take that kind of chance with my investigations. I want to be as thorough as I possibly can. And I've got to say, Rowena does a flipping fantastic job with how thorough she is with her work. Like, I've got timelines and everything of just one building alone. And we are going to be in one of the pubs in the area really soon. And she's gone back hundreds of years to a hunting lodge. And I just think that's amazing. And she also uncovers a lot of information that's been lost. And even local people are a bit like, wow, I didn't know that. So I think that's just so imperative that we have somebody on board that is capable of diving backwards and diving into history.
Google is the bane of my life as a researcher. And I mean, Google is good, but as you were saying, Poppy, a lot of people just say, "Oh, I googled it," but Google's not always right. We've done a lot with Jamie Christoffen, City Dead Tours, talking Greyfriars, Mackenzie Poltergeist, and what have you. And it's amazing the amount of people that go on Facebook and just, or they Googled Mackenzie Poltergeist and bang, 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 they stick up a post. And it's totally wrong. Jamie's a good friend of ours, and it really grinds his gears when he sees all these different posts because people don't do the research properly. I'll be honest with you, I'm crap at research. I don't have the patience for it, to sit and read. So I take my hat off to you, Roanna, because I don't have the patience to sit and dive deep into history. Laura, Sarah, they can research and stuff like that, but I don't know, maybe I'm just thick. I don't know, but I just can't get it.
I think it's something that takes a lot of patience and a lot of time. But when you're setting up or the founder of the team, you have so many different roles that you have to slot into. You cannot give yourself fully to like the area of history. Like that, we desperately needed somebody like Roanna, and I'm just so thankful for her.
So, what sparked your interest in history, Roanna?
I've always loved history ever since I was little. It was always one of my favourite subjects at school. I actually then went on and studied English at university, but then as I grew older, I realised that my main passion lay with history. So I went back to university and did my master's in history because I thought, this is something I don't think I'm ever going to lose my passion in. Not that I've lost my passion in English, it's just that the kind of jobs that you get into when you've studied English they're not quite the same as the kind of jobs you can do with history. And I love the research side of things. I call it going down a rabbit hole. I've got a habit of going down rabbit holes, which means that I find just the tiniest fact and I chase it until I can find out. It might be a dead end sometimes, but then when you do get that one actual proper lead and you achieve what you needed to, it's quite satisfying. It really is worth all of the extra work and effort at that point. And I think one of the things that I've particularly enjoyed about working on the paranormal project so far is, I've had a look at a period of time that I have never actually studied. So because a lot of the history in Cum is actually industrial, I've never really looked at the industrial age. I've mostly focused on medieval. So it's quite fun for me to have a look at a completely different time period where obviously life was really different. I mean, still some of the same day-to-day struggles, still similar kinds of squalor and disease, but a lot of it is still within living memory, which is kind of weird because it's sort of like a living history, not just entirely the past.
Laura's saying, take Caldwell, for example, no stories. We as a team had to work very hard to get where we got them pieces together. Caldwell's an estate up here. It's in Redfrewshire. Dates back to 1700, 1720, 1723. It was built by the Muir family, who were quite a prominent family at the time, but there's very, very little online about it. The Muir family lived there up until the early 1900s. I probably got this wrong. Early 1900s. Then it was sold off to the Govan Health Board, Glasgow Health Board, and there was two different stories. One was it was a care home. The other one it was a children's psychiatric kind of home kind of thing. And we spent 2 months there. doing various investigations. We got a lot of evidence there, but it was like a puzzle. We had to piece it together. But the records are all sealed in the Mitchell Library. They were sealed in 1985 for 75 years, but they just recently changed it to 100 years. So still quite a bit of time to go before the records are actually released. So you're kind of, we're crawling about, feeling about in the dark sort of thing, trying to piece stuff together. Talking about rabbit holes again, Caldwell's story of a girl, I was able to verify this happened by a policeman. Right? There was a story about a girl, I think she was around about 18, 19, that she actually got out of the house one night, and it's a 280-acre estate, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of it's forest. But the story was that this girl had got out of the house during the night, and she was found deceased on the estate the next day, frozen to death, whatever. We're not sure what happened, but that was just a story. But then Laura was able to, she found a policeman who actually was involved when they found the girl, so that kind of backed that up, you know. But I mean, history, I'll be honest with you, I was kicked out of history in second year in school. I hated history and I hated my teacher, but no, I love history, you know. What's your kind of favourite era, time in history? You got a favourite?
I think mine has to be Victorian era. I
love the Victorians.
I really do love the Victorians. We did a whole like segment on it on our TikTok channel. And yeah, I just love it, from everything from medicine to disease to the slightly darker side of, you know, the spiritual, the seances, the mourning, the funeral rituals. I love it all. I love it all. It's so it's kind of gothic, isn't it? It's sort of synonymous with the gothic way of being. But yeah, I love it.
And she's very knowledgeable about it. I think mine is probably medieval times, because that's the area that I've always looked at for sort of GCSE and A level. I did like early modern history, and then the main areas I've looked at when I was back at uni. Go back to uni at 39, guys.
That's all right. I went back to college. I think I was 30. No, 34. I went back to college for a year.
And I think second time round, I feel more like a grown up. You know, like I know exactly why I'm there and what I'm there to do. It's quite fun. But yeah, I have looked a lot at the medieval period. So I've looked at everything from sort of like transcribing medieval documents to medicine to I did a case study recently comparing the plague in Eam to COVID-19. That was quite fun, because I was looking at, you know, what they understood about disease. Although it wasn't as advanced as what we know now, they still knew that the right thing to do was to go into isolation. And then more recently, I've been looking at farming and agriculture. But the nice thing with that is it does go back like to the domestication of animals. So I've been able to go a really long way back with that. So that's been quite interesting. I did archaeology at A level and loved it. So anything that's got a good archaeological history as well, I really enjoy looking at. And of course, castles. Medieval
I love castles.
Who doesn't love a medieval castle?
No, we got so many in Wales as well, especially South Wales. We've got so many here.
After there's my wife in saying hello. She's actually sitting in the living room playing some farming game on the Xbox, but she's saying hello. Laura says she'll be 50 when she starts uni if everything works out. I mean, my favourite my favourite time in history is the Tudor period. I don't know why. I've always just been fascinated by, you know, Henry VIII, his wives, you know, all the rest of it. We've covered it quite a wee bit on shows and what have you. I just find the whole Tudor period fascinating. But castles, I love castles as well. for, you know, a couple of reasons. One is, when you think of modern buildings, they don't really last that long, but you look at some castles that still, they've been up, you know, they're 500-600 years, and a lot of them are still intact. The other thing I like about castles is, no, I'm not going to do any Tudor talk, Laura. I'm just saying that's my favourite time period in history. So Laura hates the Tudors. Tudors, she cannot
I've got to
stand
be
the Tudor thing.
honest, I'm quite partial to a good Tudor tale. I do love the Tudors as well. I find it fascinating.
I've always enjoyed, fascinated with the whole Tudor kind of era. But with castles as well, the other thing that fascinates me is, it's going to sound silly, but it's all the tiny wee bits that are still there. Like, so there's a castle here, Hunterston Castle. We were there about 2 years ago. We were covering the unveiling of the Wallace Oak for the Society of William Wallace. And we went down one day because we were going to film it. So we went down beforehand just to see the place. And one or two guys says, "You want a wee tour of the castle?" You know, there's nobody in. So I says, yes, excellent. So she took me around the castle, but she was showing me, you know, things like original brackets stuck into the walls and door hinges and things you just walk by, you know, which you see that this is the original bracket. And then I actually found out why the stairs were built in the way, you know, the spiral staircase, why they built them that way as well, which I found truly fascinating. I take it you know why.
It's to do with sword fighting.
I sort of.
And the steps used to be like staggered in such a way that the distances were slightly off, so that you would lose your footing as you'd go up.
Exactly. And I found this I'd never given it any thought. You know, to me, that's just how they made the stairs back then. But when she stood and she explained it to me, I thought, well, wait a minute, you know.
Sorry, I have a small person. What's the matter?
I think it might be snack time.
One SRP for every question.
Okay, well, go on up to bed. I'll be up in a bit. Good boy. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I know, it's fine. We've got a 10-year-old and she usually pops in. She might actually still appear. She usually kind of appears, smiles, and then goes away again. So, you know,
yeah, that's my 12-year-old deciding to. He's reading Sherlock Holmes, and I don't think it's quite gripped him as much as I hoped it might. Yeah.
Give him a good horror book or something like that.
I know. I really probably should. Yeah.
I mean, her daughter, she loves the Saw films. She's fascinated with the Saw films.
Yeah.
She's 10, but I think we've broken her. You know, she likes to watch Saw and all the blood and guts. But no, I say that I found that fascinating, and a lot of people might think, oh, you know, so what? You know, so that's how they built it. But I think it shows you the intelligence of these people back then as well. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think that the engineering, I mean, you look at some of the doorways and things like that, and an entire doorway was being held up by like one central brick, essentially. And the engineering and the thought that went into these buildings, like you said, they were built to last. And that's why there's still so many of them still around, as particularly in Wales, apparently.
Yeah, there are.
But you know, I have always found, I don't think I could live in the medieval period, just to be very clear. Partly because I don't think I'd want to have to wander around in a really restrictive dress. But I do find that their architecture, their rough grasp of medicine, I mean, it wasn't ideal, but at least they had slightly more than we'd had previously. And things like the courtly love and stuff like that you read about in poetry, and you know, it's just all these ideals that they had that hadn't necessarily existed in such a good degree before. I'm not saying they didn't exist, just not to such a degree. Although I don't think Henry VIII going through as many wives as he did was necessarily the right thing to do. I equally understand he was after an heir. And if you were the King of England, that is probably what you were able to do, as demonstrated by Henry.
Let's face it, he could, as you say, he was the King of England. He could do whatever he wanted, and nobody dared to question him. You know, we were very fortunate in Kilmarnock to have a castle with extensive history of the Boyd family, and inside you will find one of the finest European arms and armour collections and historical musical instruments, including some of the earliest violins anywhere in Europe. That's Dean Castle. But it's in up at Dean Park. Past it, been in the park, but I've never ever been inside the castle. But as build it, I mean, you look at just what you're saying about Henry VIII. Look at Hampton Court Palace. I don't know if you've been at Hampton Court.
No.
But there are quite a few ghost stories with Hampton Court, aren't there?
There is. There's one or two attached to it. But I mean, I've been to Hampton Court 3 times. I've been lucky enough to go, and just standing, looking at how it was built back in the 1500s, late 1500s. You know, I mean, these guys didn't have, engineering degrees and all the fancy, diggers, construction equipment and everything that have these days. But if you look at something like Hampton Court Park, how complex it is, how big it is, you think, how did they do it?
I mean, when you want to talk about, structural architectures and engineering and things like that, I mean, man did make pyramid long before Hampton Court, and look at those structures. They're still lasted today, and the intricacies of those. But yeah, it is wonderful. It is wonderful.
Just focusing on the paranormal side, I remember watching a documentary years ago about Stonehenge, and they were trying to work out how it was built. So what they did is they got the sort of top engineers together, and they gave them what instruments they thought the people back then would have used, wood and rope, stuff like that, and says, right, build it, and the engineers gave up. They couldn't do it with the materials that they had. They think, well, how did these guys, do it thousands of years ago if the top engineers of the day gave up trying to do it? So we can't do this. Using ropes and stuff, and it just makes you wonder. But
it makes you wonder if the people who built it originally obviously had any experience of, because they wouldn't have really had a formal education of engineering. Maybe if you have a formal education, is there a chance that you overthink it?
Aye, I get what you're talking about. I just find it fascinating. That's the other side of history I find fascinating. How they put these buildings together and how they're still standing to this day.
According to legend, it was Merlin helped with Stonehenge. He got the stone from Priscilla to Stonehenge.
In Wales.
In Wales.
Yeah.
That's the legend.
Do you believe the legend?
No. I'm going to regret saying that one day, aren't I? So I believe that legends are created to explain something. And so they are stories that are almost there to tell around a fire, and they're a bit like fairy tales. They would have started off actually they were supposed to be stories that you told other adults, but then became things that became more of something we told our children. So I live in Somerset. I grew up not too far from Glastonbury, so I grew up with all the King Arthur stories and the whole, this is the Isle of Avalon, and this castle's, well, it's not a castle, it's a hill fort, is Camelot. But now there are other places, and I know Wales is one of those places, and always has been one of those places that has quite a strong claim to King Arthur. And there are lots of Arthurian legends linked to Wales, but they think that King Arthur was called Arthur, which means bear or leader, and that actually it was maybe more than one person over a length of time just had this title, and that they were a leader rather than the kind of king in a castle with knights that we imagine King Arthur to be, because that's what the French romantic view of it was, when sort of like Chrétien de Troyes started writing and people like that. So I think, yeah, that legends are written to explain real events, but are probably not how those real events occurred.
Are they more kind of glamorized kind of thing? That
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas Dundonald Castle too. Dundonald's a wee village about 10 minutes first. The castle itself was built 1371 by King Robert II, and the majority of that castle is still standing, still intact. You can go inside it, you know, and that's going back, I don't know, my maths is crap, 700-800 years, you know. But you get buildings these days that last 40 years and they're falling apart.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we should start building castles again. So the whole paranormal side, so you formed Project Paranormal Project. Then how did your first lot of investigations and that go, experiences wise?
Oh wow. So we always knew that we were going to start. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way through. So the first being the mines, the old pit colliery area, and then go up to the cemetery. We've sort of lost order in between, but it doesn't matter. That's fine. But yeah, we started off with the Cum Colliery, Marine Colliery. And Rowena did a lot of extensive background history on it. We found out a lot of really sad details about the tragedies that happened there. And essentially 54 men or 56 men had died in the disaster of 1927.
Yeah. I can't pull the figure out of my head, I'm afraid, but it's around that number. It was over 50.
It was a lot of men, and even before that there was so many tragedies with younger men, children, and so we knew that this area was steeped with trauma. And so I had a meeting with Ghostwatch Wales, Geraint and Gethin, and they came down and we did sort of like a preliminary, and Gethin is their medium. And so we walked down, Geraint is the medium, and we walked down there, you know, we had a good gander, and Geraint picked up on a figure, and he could see a very small man in an old like miner's helmet. And he said, Poppy, come with me, come have a look. And I said, okay, I'll come over. So he said, put your hand out. And I didn't know where I was feeling, so I just put my hand out, and it was so strange. I could feel like a warm tingling going up my fingers. And he said, you've got your palm on his chest at the moment. But I could honestly feel it. And then like the experience of it was just going up my arm, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And he's like, you're so brave. And I'm like, this is what I'm here for. I was so excited by it. And so yeah, Rowena started to piece together the history behind everything. And we went down there and we did like a walkthrough with the EMFs. We did the Estes method. We had Gethin go through, and he loves to sing choral music. He's for the choir, so he was singing Welsh hymns as a way to connect with anybody that passed and maybe give them a sense of normality, or just a way to comfort and connect, because that's something else that we're really passionate about doing, is humanizing our experiences, because we don't like to sensationalize. So anyway, we did all these sort of methods, and we honestly did pick up quite a lot, didn't we? And it was upon revision as well. There was a lot more. So Gethin was doing live playbacks, and you could hear people talking, you know, on the EVPs. I don't think we picked up much on the SLS cameras, but we did have, I forget what they're called now, but they're word generating apps.
Are we using Necrophonic app? Are you good?
Yeah,
And
I think that's probably it.
Spirit Pocket as well.
Yeah, and we also had that evening. I mean, I do some mediumship work, but I can't say I'm fully trained for that. I am being trained by Ryan, our own medium. But yeah, we walked through, me and our guest medium, and we were both feeding off each other as well. There was like a lot of experiences. We have put up some videos of it, so if you want more in-depth explanations and maybe a bit of the evidence that we found, have a look on our channels. But yeah, it was amazing. And then when we went to go through all the investigation material, there was mimic voices. There was the most remarkable thing is that we were expecting people, but we were never expecting horses. Like,
right.
in a million years, we just didn't think about the horses of the mine. And I was taking pictures as we were leaving the site. I was the last one there, and it was a cold night, but there was no like frost, there was no mist, it was just a still cold night. And I was just taking pictures, and because I've got that sequence of pictures, there was nothing there, and then all of a sudden it looks like a horse. Then there's nothing, and then it looks like a horse's cart. And because most of the people within the team have at some point had horses or have horses, they instantly went, oh my God, that's a horse. That looks like heavy tack. So it wasn't like I'm imagining it. It was just like the team just went, wow, sort of thing, you know. And yeah, it was just amazing. We had a lot of correlation with horses. We had like clicking noises, you know, like calling horses. We even picked up on the, like you were saying, the necrophonic type apps. We were having horse come through, we had bridle come through. There was also a playback with the medium and myself of seeing a stable. And when I think Rowena was looking back in the maps, you did find something out about stables, maybe, am I right?
They had two different kinds of mine there over the years. So it started off with kind of a shallow mine that you could have walked a horse in and out of, and then it got to the point where they were using ponies, but they were 15 hands. They were like the height of Henry VIII's war horses. They were not little. In the mines, and they were lowering them down, and they would then live in a stables underground for all but 2 weeks of a year every year, and then for about 2 weeks they got put out to pasture, but the rest of the time they would be underground in the mine. The miners apparently tended to treat their horses quite well. The horses could find their way around in the dark. They could, you know, if they're sort of I don't know what it would be called, the tack that joined them to the cart, I'm going to call it, because I can't think what it's called, the harness and things, if that broke and they took off, they could find their way back to the stables in the dark. They were quite, I mean, horses are quite impressive creatures anyway. They're one of my favorite animals. And I do believe they're one of the sort of most intelligent animals that you can work with if you're working with animals. And a lot of those miners, I think, knew that their horses or their ponies could ultimately save their lives if they needed, you know, the extra help underground. But you had to treat them right. Otherwise, I think they were quite horrible to you and bit you and kicked you.
Well, that's it. I mean, I've got a couple of comments that stick for Laura, stick on the end, but no, you're totally right, Ryan. You know, it's the same as having any pet. If you're bad to you know, you hear all these horror stories of people neglecting their pet, whether a dog, a cat, whatever it might be, you know, and just totally neglected, ignored, etc. And the pet turns against them, and you can't really blame them because, you know, the horses, cats, dogs, you know. But a lot of people might say, oh, they're just dumb animals, you know. But at the end of the day, they've got personalities, they've got feelings, you know. say personality. I mean, we've got 2 cats, and one's kind of timid, but the other one, she's a moody so-and-so. Do you know what I mean? She's 5, I think, but she's got quite an attitude on her, and that's just a cat, but you can tell instantly she's got this, this is my house kind of thing. And Laura in the chat, my wife, she's still in the chat, she'll tell you, she's got quite a wee bit of an attitude on her. So imagine horses would be the exact same, and they would need to really look after them, because let's face it, without the horses, they wouldn't have been able to get the coal, whatever it was, to where it was going. So, you expect them to be, well looked after, well fed, and, loved, basically. Laura's saying Dunure Castle, as well as best known as the stronghold of the Kennedy clan, and macabre 16th century kidnap torture incident in his Black Vault. That's near us as well. Too many on our doorstep. There's really strange you mentioned this. My husband Scott are due to investigate a secret place in Kilmarnock where there was a mining disaster where men and children died. There is, I'm originally from Glasgow. I only moved here about 10, 11 years ago. But Craig's saying most with teenagers died, cat boys, etc.
I think when you have that kind of deaths happening, it becomes such an imprint of energy and trauma that you are bound to get something. You're bound to. So I wouldn't be surprised.
What is also worth remembering is that Cwm was a really small community. That community grew up around the mine and the mining, and those people moved there because they were looking for jobs and they found jobs in mining. I mean, the number of people on the census and all the records that I looked at that were actually from Somerset, people from Somerset went to Cwm to mine. And I laughed, didn't I, Poppy? Because I was like, see, I know Wales isn't that far from us, but, the fact that people were moving from Somerset to go and get work in Wales.
And of course, Andy from the team as well, he found out that all of a sudden he had family from years ago that's, come to Cwm. So it's weird, this sort of group dynamic with the connection to Cwm, and
And
it's a small village, but big magnet, basically. Right?
Yeah, I mean, when it was first built, there really wasn't there was nothing there before the mine. It was mostly just farmhouses, and that was pretty much it. And then the mine came, and then suddenly there were hotels and there were shops, so many shops, that they had toy shops and sweet shops and hardware stores and, grocers and butchers and all the normal ones. But they had people moved there from various other places within the valleys, I think, looking for their fortune. And I know Poppy said to me that sometimes the miners then moved on to places like Australia or America because they were looking for their fortunes elsewhere. And if you were a miner, you tended to go where the work was, so it didn't necessarily matter where in the world that was, you followed it. And a lot of the housing that they've got there now is still the original cottages that were put up for the miners and for the people that worked in the mines. So it's got a lot of industrial history to it that I think probably holds, because the whole community would have been affected by the mining accident. The whole community would have experienced like a massive trauma at the same time.
Especially if it's a main community. I mean, the cottages that are still there, the original cottages, is they're kind of, I mean, we do a place called Loudon Kirk. We've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years. Sarah and I get married there last year in the crypt. But there's a farm nearby. There's one prominent family buried in the Kirk. There's a farm near, it's about a quarter of a mile away. That they owned this farm back in the 1800s. And we've been up quite a few times. I mean, you go up to they weren't the miners, they were farmers, but when you go up to the cottages and you're standing about, you still can feel, you still get the sense that there's people wandering about, you know, farm hands, whatever you call them. And I've said to the owners a couple of times, you know, when you come up here, you always feel like it's somebody says, I get that every single day. Like they've got a wee kind of small courtyard sort of thing. He says, especially when you step out into the courtyard, says you feel like there's people just going about their usual daily jobs, business, whatever. Did you get that feeling, you know, there?
So, fun fact, I don't even think Rowena knows this. I was just totaling it up in my brain. I think we've lived in either 8 or 10 houses in Cum during my lifetime. And every single house has had something. I can probably talk about one of my worst experiences. So I won't name streets or anything, but one of the houses was I was about 13 at the time when we moved in, and it started off really light activity. Like we would see like my dog's ball just bounce down the stairs, and we'd go, oh, it just fell down the stairs, and the dog would be watching something. And then gradually, like at the time we were going through a bit of trauma because my nan had just sort of like passed and there was a lot of things going on. And then it was like the computer chairs were just spinning around on their own in the middle of the room. And there's like no explanation, and we were hearing voices, and there was just like lots, just so much in such a short space of time. And it got to a point where like me and my mum, it was back in the day, you know, when there would be adverts on the telly and you just quickly run, make a cup of tea, or quickly run up and go to toilet. Just, yeah, it was one of those times. It's a long time ago, kids. So yeah, my mum ran up to go to toilet, and I was waiting, and I was like, come on, mum. And she came down, and like she had like a very blank white face, and I thought, come on, hurry up, I want to go to toilet. I screamed the house down, because this was the first time that I'd actually been in close proximity to the outline shape of a man as a mist. And I was like, oh my God, I've seen a ghost. I don't know how I didn't pee myself on the spot, but you know. But yeah, I ran back downstairs, and mum was like, I wasn't going to tell you, but I did hear a voice come from your bedroom. Gradually, it's getting worse and worse. Then there was a window in my mum's room that was jammed packed. Like it just wouldn't, no matter what you did, you couldn't open it. Well, one night she woke up frozen in bed. The window was just full blown open like a door. And there was we just couldn't explain these things. I had the shadow of what looks like the very, very famous Hat Man phenomena. And it was very much like that, leaning over me. We had breathing in our face. We had like our hands being tapped. There were some deeper, darker things that happened that I won't go into out of respect for my mother. But there was a lot of things negative that happened. And then eventually things like the taps were just going on full blown, absolute full blown throughout the house, just turned on. And we're like, what the heck is happening? We had ornaments suspended almost in air. It would go like thump across, and then it would just drop down. We saw massive light orbs. There was just so much in that house, and it got to a point where my mum was like, enough is enough, we're leaving, we're gone. And that was just one of the houses.
Just what do you think? Laura's saying, I have proof that animals pass away, come back. Attitude, Pepper. Never. She has got an attitude, Laura. Her cat has an attitude. Was it anything? Did it feel negative or anything?
Yeah, it was really oppressive, really dark, and it liked to mess with you. Like it used to trap my sister. Every time my sister would come in, because we had this really small porchway, it's like a square, so you would go in through a door, close it, and then go out through the front door. It's just a really small space. And my sister would come through the door. She'd be talking for a while to my mum, you know, just come back from work and talking to my mum, and then she was going to go home. Went to open the door, and there was somebody behind it. And it always wanted to mess with my sister. And like I said, there was experiences that happened in that house that were negative, very negative in nature. but I can't talk out of respect. But yeah, it was horrific. It was horrific.
You think maybe a lot of people use the demonic word and stuff like that. We don't. I call them grumpy spirits.
Yeah, I think honestly, the man that was there, and I want to go back into this property because I've since developed different skills. So I want to be able to go in with my people and myself and just go in and actually, if I do get the permission to do it, and actually get to the bottom of it. I just feel like this is an angry man, and it's not the first time that we've come across an angry spirit.
Do you think he's maybe a previous tenant or something? Because I've heard a lot of stories, that you girls have as well, that, you maybe get an elderly man who lived in a house for decades and then he passes away and then people move into the house, and they start, usually it's when they start to redecorate or renovate, the activity starts, and it turns out it's the previous occupant, still in the mindset, this is my house and you've come in here and you're pulling down a wall or wallpaper in my favourite room or, whatever. That tends to kind of kick them off a wee bit. What do you think of that? I've heard a few stories with that.
Yeah, so I can sort of draw parallels to a few things. So yes, with our house, I do think it was a previous tenant. When we walked into the home, there was a lot of air fresheners around the property. And there was one stain in the carpet that we could never get rid of. I won't go into too much detail, but it was a substance that we couldn't just get off with a vax. And we seem to think that maybe that person had died on that spot and maybe was found. And also, incredibly, this was the first bit of like paranormal things that I did, I had the dowsing rods. When I was really young, I had the dowsing rods. Every time I'd walk around with the dowsing rods and I went over that spot where there was that stain, it just go thump. Nowhere else in the house, just that spot.
Just that one bit. Our daughter's got dowsing. She got them as a gift. We were up in Inverness a few weeks ago with Highland Paranormal and Phantom Seekers, and they used the dowsing rods, and one of the guys gave her a set of dowsing rods. We've not used them yet. I've never used them, but we're going to give them a try. What about you, Lionel, with your paranormal side? Any experiences?
My first experience, I was probably 12-ish, and we'd not long moved into a very old cottage, and I went up the stairs and a little girl skipped across the landing and through the bathroom wall on the other side of the landing. And she was dressed, I would say, I want to say she was dressed in that typical sort of Anne of Green Gables dress and pinny type get up. I couldn't necessarily date her, although someone out there who's better versed in historical costume than I may be able to. But that house had, my first experiences of activity were in that property. The worst one was that my brother, sister, and I were all in the living room one day, and then on the lower door, there was a study built onto the house, which would have the door would have originally been an external door, but because the study had been built on the end, it wasn't external anymore. It went into the study and down some quite steep stone steps, and the study was always cold, and the cats slept in there mostly, but only because we put them in there, not necessarily because they wanted to be in there. But we were in the living room, and I swear someone knocked really, really loudly 3 times on the door, and my sister ran from the room. My brother was like, what do we do? I picked up a poker, because pokers are really useful. And I remember him basically pushing me through the door ahead of him and into the study, with me brandishing a poker, only to find there was absolutely nothing there, nothing. And there was no reason, there was no wind in there was nothing that could have made that door shake, and it was so seriously like a knock. It couldn't be, you know how doors rattle with the wind, you couldn't have mistaken it for, it was 3 loud knocks. But the house we lived in had been a bakery many years ago, and it makes me wonder if that was perhaps the door that people came to buy bread. I don't know, but yeah, it was an interesting property, and I had a hat man experience there, but not the kind of hat man that Poppy's talking about. Ours was a bloke just in a hat. It wasn't like the hat man. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of 50-50 on this hat man kind of thing. Laura's saying camera at Ivy House. The Ivy House, have you heard of the Ivy House? It's just, it's known as the Ivy House.
I feel like I have, but I don't know where I would have heard of it from.
It's just outside Warrington. It's about 15-minute drive west of Warrington. It's called the Ivy House. It's Screaming House, the Demon House. It's got quite a few names, but the story behind it is it was a doctor that lived in there that unalived his wife in the bath, and then wrapped her up and dragged her across the top landing floor. We went down and investigated it, I don't know, a few years back now with Charlie and Rops and other people. And we were all up the stairs. There was 2 main rooms down the stairs. I don't know when the house dates back to, but it's an old building. So we had put locked off cameras in both the bottom rooms and just left them. Everybody was up the stairs, and then we looked back in the footage, and one of the cameras, our cameras had a light attached to the top of it, which was screwed on. And we'd obviously with a microphone on it. When we watched back the footage, I think we've still got the footage. You could hear what sounded like wooden soles, wooden heels walking into the room. And then the light moved, but the camera never moved. And you heard what sounded like a little girl kind of playful giggle, and then footsteps as if they were going back out the room. There was nobody down the stairs, you know, but the light and the camera moved, but the camera itself never moved. We could not explain that.
I love locked off cameras, because one of the last cases that we did, we worked with some residents in their home, and they were experiencing really heavy poltergeist activity and a lot of like negative things. So the night before, no, sorry, it was 2 nights before, they messaged me and said, we've got things happening. And I went, hold on, wait a minute, I'm going to come with a locked off camera. I mean, Rowena was like, don't do it, it's too late.
This is the point where Rowena tells Poppy off for walking up the road in the dark at 10 o'clock at night on her own.
No, I think I would have been with Rowena on that one. I would have been, you know, leave it to another time.
But if I hadn't done that, Rowena, we wouldn't have one of the best.
You're not going to do it again, though, Poppy, are you? Because you promised me.
I absolutely will. I absolutely will. If we're going to get that evidence, we absolutely will.
Are you going to have a domestic? Can I watch?
Yes.
Right, carry on.
No, seriously though, I get so cross with her, because I'm like, just because you live somewhere that seems all nice and quiet and lovely, don't do it.
No, I'm sorry, Poppy, but I agree with Rowena. You know, I mean, you live in a small, quiet village, and with the crime rate, maybe, I don't know, not very high.
Joke. I always say, if I end up dying, just use the equipment. You can contact me that way.
I feel like this is a threat, okay? So she's told me that if she dies, she's leaving me all the equipment and I have to make contact with her.
She's still keep in touch with you?
Yeah. But she wants me to take responsibility for making contact.
Yeah. It's kind of putting the burden on you. No burden, but you know what I mean? You know, right, Rowena, it's your job now. There's my camera and everything else.
I just feel like she'll nag me from the other side. She'll be like,
You mean a grumpy spirit?
No.
I think she'd be like, have you done X, Y, and Z? No, she doesn't nag me really. She doesn't nag me really, but she
now the
tries
truth's
to.
coming out.
She administrates me. Is that the right word?
Means she's a bit bossy.
No, she just keeps me on track. Because you know what us historians are like. We get stuck in a book and we disappear for days. Poppy makes sure that I check in with reality occasionally.
That you're actually still on the right side of the grass as well. Basically.
I love the way that my way of checking in with reality is to actually look at the paranormal, but you know, it's all good.
I mean, the paranormal is a fascinating subject, you know. I mean, and it's surprising how many people are actually into the paranormal, but they won't admit it.
I don't think I realised actually how people would respond. I was actually having this conversation with Rowena and Gethin earlier on. I started off doing the socials because I thought, you know, we're going to need some kind of platform for a community or for us to connect on. And then recently our TikTok has just gone astronomically well. So is our Facebook. You know, we're suddenly just getting an influx of people that want to follow us. And it's amazing. And honestly, I don't think we would be where we are without the support of everyone that has, you know, shown an interest, followed us. And we are grateful for it. We always will be.
And we've been able to meet some lovely people like yourself.
Yeah.
So, you see, you've got to say that because you're on this show. But, you know, thank you. Thank you very much. But not 110% agree with everything you said. You know, as when we started it, you know, we started at the wrong time, but the right time. That makes sense. We started during the pandemic, you know, lockdown came, couldn't go anywhere. All right, what we're going to do? But well, let's just start talking to people. Because everybody's locked up, basically. I don't mean in prison and stuff. I mean, you know, at home.
Well, effectively, it was like prison, wasn't it? It was a pandemic prison.
It was. You were only allowed 15 minutes a day or so. I can't even remember what it was up here, but it was, you know, you could only go 15 minutes for essential exercise or some crap like that. But, you know, we'd never done podcasts either. So, well, do you know what? Let's just start talking to people. And we thought we'll give the podcast a wee go, and I started reaching out to people, and it was amazing the amount of people who said, "Oh, we'd love to come on." Aye, no bother, you know, and the amount of friends that we've met, including yourselves, through just doing podcasts. You know, we've a lot of friends in America, no doubt you guys have as well. You girls have, you know, America, Australia, people you would never have met. If you hadn't started doing the paranormal, and it's amazing that as you say, Poppy, the amount of support that you get, you've had. We're the exact same because we're nothing big. We live in a wee town in the west coast of Scotland, you know, and it's the amount of support that you get, and it becomes a community, like a family kind of thing.
Oh, definitely. You know? I feel like I'm really privileged to not only have friends within the actual group, but they feel like an extended family. I think everybody looks out for each other. I say that Rowena is like a sister to me. She keeps me out of trouble.
Well, I'm saying nothing, but I mean, 3 years ago, I had a heart attack, a mild heart attack. But you know, Sarah put up on the page I was commissioned for X amount of time, and the amount of messages that I got for people, you know, rest up, do as you're told. You know, half of them would give me into trouble, but it was the amount of support that people, you know, that I just spoke to in a podcast. You know, sorry, you know, well, thoughts out, you know, all the usual kind of mail, but it was actually quite overwhelming. And it's then that you know that don't get me wrong, there is a dark side to the paranormal, as you've probably noticed, all these fame hunters and all the rest of it, you know, everything's a demon and stuff like that. But no, if you meet the right people and you get the right team together, then it's you know, it's really it's brilliant, basically, and it encourages you to keep going.
Oh,
Does that make
1,000%.
sense?
1,000%.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we are always mindful of, and we're trying to discourage from happening, is this whole sensationalism of every bad ghost is a demon or evil. That's not the case at all. Every spirit that's a human spirit has got a story, has had a life, has got emotion, has got trauma. Not everyone's going to be happy, just like in life. You know, we've joked around and said, you know, if you're a bit of a dickhead in life, then you will be in death as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, as well, is, you know, with the younger generations, they tend to go down this line. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them are more inclined to go on the YouTube side of things, where we call them screamers, because that's what a lot of the teens tend to do, is just scream and sensationalize. So one of the things that we're doing this summer, which we've just launched, places are now filled, we've got investigators in training who are under 18s. We've got this sort of like bracket of 14 to 16 at the moment, and we're trying to train them in a way that is educational, that professional, and so they learn the sort of correct mechanics behind investigating, rather than just going in, taking some equipment, going in blind, maybe being a little bit disrespectful to their surroundings. And, you know, we don't want that to happen. We want to encourage the better behavior. And so that's what we're doing. We're doing investigators in training program.
This is not cigarette time, dear. We are a professional channel. I've no idea what she means. This is not sometimes Laura will put a comment and it's kind of cryptic, you know.
Maybe it's a typo.
This is not cigarette time, dear. We are a professional channel. You need to explain that one, Laura. I'll just be like you. Whoosh, that's gone. I did no idea what that is. But no, I mean that is a good idea, Poppy. I mean the other thing, just come back to what you said to we said, is if you get the right team, you know. I mean we one point of 22 people, I think, in our team for Scotland, England, Wales kind of thing, and it just did not work. There was too many hassles, too many arguments, everybody had different ideas, and the amount of arguments, and Sarah and I just thought, you know what? No, it's not happening. These are all bagged. Goodbye. And now it's just Laura and her husband, Sarah and I, and Laura's daughter comes out with every now and again, and we've been really, really lucky. Same as yourselves, they've got people on a team that are genuine, maybe a wee bit nutty, because I think you need to be, you know, just that wee bit one screw loose here and there. But that you can rely on, you know, and they're not going to, you know, let you down and stuff like that. You think that's bad. If Sarah dies, or I have to bury her with a cigarette and a can of Monster, and I have to scroll through TikTok an hour a day while she chills on my fire. That's if my wife, you know, passes, she wants cremated, she wants to be stuck on Laura's fireplace. I don't think they call it a mantelpiece anymore, do they? That's giving away my age, isn't it? But a can of Monster, a cigarette, and Laura's to go at that for an hour through TikTok.
I can get behind that. I wouldn't go anywhere without my can of Monster, would I, Rowena?
No, you're right.
You're
very fond of your Monster. I personally have never drunk a can of Monster in my life, and I always thought they smelled a bit sweet, but I don't know.
My
I've
wife's
never had
2
Red
cans
Bull
a day.
either.
Oh,
I do
no,
love
Red Bull
caffeine
either.
though.
I'm not into energy drinks, but I do. I like my coffee. I
have to say I'm a caffeine fan, but not an energy drink fan. Apart from Lucozade, which of course I grew up with as a if you're poorly, you can have some Lucozade thing.
Yeah.
So I don't mind Lucozade.
when you were no well, that's what your granny and mum gave you, wasn't it? The Lucozade wrapped in. Do you remember the plastic wrapping that used to be in?
Yeah.
I remember that. That's getting away
Yeah.
my age as well, but no. And we were actually talking the other, Sarah Laura and I were talking when my grandma, God rest her, she was very, very old fashioned. And whenever we get teeth out, she used to give us a bowl of hot milk with bread in it. She'd break the bread up and put it in a bowl. And that's what we used to get every time we came back from the dentist after we'd been traumatized. You know, because back in that day, they strapped you onto the chair. If they were taking a tooth out, they strapped you on the chair and you got the rubber mask with the gas. This is before the injection came along. And so you were traumatized as a kid, you know, because somebody strapped you down and gassed you. And then you go home and your grandma's like that. There's a bowl of hot milk and bread, son. Eat that. That'll sort you right out.
Lovely.
I think nowadays it's ice cream, isn't it? Get ice cream now.
Look into Scott's ego. We need to live with him. I don't have an ego. I've totally lost track of what I was saying, but no, hot milk and bread, that's what my grandma used to give us, God rest her. Because I would sort anything out, you know, not in a good way. But I mean, there's that, you know, as I was saying, a lot of people, it's surprising how many people are into the paranormal but won't admit it. I mean, your daughter, she's 10, she's right into it, and she tells her wee pals in school that she loves going to graveyards and stuff like that. You know, a couple of years ago, one of her birthdays, I said her mum was, I think Sarah was working, and I said, right, what do you want to do? If we go to Sockley, she says, no, I want to go to a graveyard. I said, you know what, to go to Sockley? I think she would have been 7 or 8 maybe. She says, no, I want to go to Sockley and jump about. And no, I want to go to a graveyard. That's what she wanted to speak. So she tells all her wee pals in school, and I go to graveyards and stuff. And a lot of the parents come up to me and say, you do the paranormal, don't you? And I say, I love that. I'm right into that. But they'll not tell anybody. Have you found that? Because there's a kind of stigma attached to it.
I think that people assume that if you're interested in the paranormal, it must mean that you're not scientific minded because you believe in something that not everybody can see. But I think for me, part of what we do is we use science to try and prove whether or not it's there. And we will always try and debunk everything we possibly can before we say, oh, okay, we can't debunk this last thing, you know. So therefore, what's left is paranormal. Because once you can explain that it's not the pipes knocking and it's not next door that you can hear through the wall and it's not, you know, that breeze that you can feel is because you've got a draft under your door. I think you have got to then start looking for, it's a Sherlock Holmes quote, isn't there? And I can never remember the quote properly, but it's that once you've explained it, I can't remember the quote, I'm not going to do this right, which is terrible. It's you explain away all the ordinary and what must be left must be true, or something like that. I can't remember what it is. I
know you. What's left?
Please find the quote.
It's what's left, because Peter Underwood, we're good friends with Mark Egerton, who's an author and a story, a tour guide as well. He was trained by Peter Underwood, and Peter used to use the same phrase when he was training Mark up, and it's if you exclude. Oh, I don't know. You've got me thinking now what it is.
It's something to do with once you've excluded all the different possibilities that it can be, then whatever's left must be what is true. But that's not the quote, and I'm sure Arthur Conan Doyle put it a lot better than that. And hopefully there are now people shouting at YouTube going, we know the quote. If you know the quote, please, please, please write it up.
Arthur Conan Doyle is currently turning in his grave.
I know. But he was a spiritualist, so maybe he'll be my friend.
Maybe. Well, Laura's putting Nurse Ratchet. I have no idea again. That's the second time tonight, Laura.
I only know of the TV series of Nurse Ratchet. I don't even know if it's based on a true story.
Nurse Ratchet is...
Sorry, carry on. She's in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That's what I was just going to say. Medication Time. That's what I know it for. That nurse.
Yeah.
You see,
Blank, no idea.
Nurse, when they were having a domestic.
We're not having domestic. We're just having a moment of contemplation together.
Well, yes. It's good that Rowena looks after you, but you know, and she keeps you on the
we keep each other in line. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We joke around, don't we? We say that both of us function on half a brain individually, but between us, we're a whole.
We're like a whole functioning brain.
Yeah.
But that is a good thing. But just get by what you were saying, Poppy, about teaching people. There's too many people getting into the paranormal these days, especially on TikTok. No doubt you girls have seen it as well. And a lot of them are overnight tarot readers or overnight mediums.
Do you know what I read? Somebody's TikTok status thing. It was like a write-up thing, and they said, respectfully, if you're using cat balls as a way to investigate, you're not an investigator. And I'm thinking, don't we just, we use cat balls and other things.
We use them.
There's nothing wrong with cat balls. They work as a tool. I mean, we adapt things anyway. I mean, people adapted a teddy bear, for goodness sake. It's just an adaptation of tool. So what's so wrong with cat balls?
Exactly. There's your savior there.
I was going to say, I saw a really good Ghost Hunters. I'm pretty sure it would have been Ghost Hunters, where they were using cat balls, but there were cats locked in a room and they kept sticking their paws under the door and moving the balls.
Yeah.
And that was brilliant, because they were going, what? The cat is just moved. And they went out and they were like, oh no, there's cats. They're just sticking their paws out.
And they never see them. Craig saying, when you have eliminated all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
Thank you. Oh, there you go. That'll help.
Conan Doyle.
I was worried that was going to come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I was going to have to message Poppy. He will probably be awake anyway, so that's fine.
See, I do that. I'll maybe be watching, say, for instance, a film, and there'll be somebody in it, actress, actor, whatever, and I'll recognise their face, or you hear a line somewhere, and you think, I know that line. And it can be 2 or 3 weeks, Sarah, Laura, it can be 2 or 3 weeks down the line, and it'll just suddenly pop into my head. Smokey and the Bandit. We could be talking about, cooking or Smokey and the Bandit, and Sarah will be like, what? That line that I remember 3 weeks ago, that's where it's from, So I can relate to that, Rowena, that you just pop into your head. You could be, ironing or doing the dishes or something. The Omen 2, that's where that line was for. And people just look at you, I mean, equipment-wise, we, just when you talk about Victorian stuff, we're good friends with Barry Frankish, who's got the Victorian Ghost Hunter. We're a kind of basic team. We don't use all the fact. We'll use with a K2 REM pods. We'll use an Echophonic, Spirit Talker, cat balls, stuff like that. Because we're kind of the frame of mind that some spirits that milk and bread. That's my grandma. I was telling you, that's what my grandma used to give us after getting milk and bread. I forgot what I was saying. So we go into basic stuff, because really kind of frame of mind. I've watched, no disrespect to them, but no doubt you girls have seen it. They'll go in and say, right, I've got a K2 meter here and a REM pod. If you get somebody for maybe the Middle Ages, for instance, they don't have a clue what a K2 is.
Mm.
You know, but as you say, I call it a black box because everybody knows what a box is. So say, well, I've got a wee box here and it'll light up if you get near it, if you touch it. And I'll just leave it lying here for you. Just if you want to go over it, it'll just light up. What kind of stuff to use?
We were
The stuff that-
actually, oh, sorry, Poppy. I was just going to really quickly cut in and say the conversation we were having the other day about the music boxes that play the horrible tunes. Because we were saying, if you were a child ghost, would you want to go and touch that box or walk in front of that box if it then played a spooky tune?
I
Probably
feel like
not.
I feel like you need something that is relevant to that time era. So if you're walking into, I don't know, a 1950s house, I would put something that's 1950s music. You know, I would just do something that correlates with the time period versus putting creepy music. Why is everything a connotation of horror and creepiness in the paranormal? Because it's not all horror and creepy. That is one of the things that really does irritate me. And I say this, and I guess I'm a little bit what's the word? I'm not too sure. But when I make my TikTok videos, you're straight away given like horror music because that's the algorithm. So I end up using it and I'm thinking I don't really want to use it, but that's what's on the algorithm. And it's frustrating to see that, it gets my goat. Yeah.
But I get that because, you know, a lot of people do associate the paranormal with horror.
Mm-hmm.
And you know yourselves, you know, you've done enough investigation. You do go into places. You go into places and you get grumpy spirits. You know, it's happened to everybody. You know, somebody who maybe wasn't a people person in life and they're not a people person on the other side. They just want to be left alone.
So I can jump in.
You know.
I can jump in with this because this is so like relevant to our last house case. So, like I said to you, they were having this poltergeist activity, but there was a spirit there. There's two spirits. Initially, again, I tuned in using my mediumship. So there was a male spirit who was very much a hermit, who wanted to just stay in the house. He wanted to stay in his spot with his armchair, and I could see him drinking something. So I don't know if he was alcoholic. I'm not too sure. That part wasn't clear to me. But in his spot where the armchair was a modern day in-person sofa. But we used the SLS camera, and using the SLS camera, we were connected to a spirit that we could see that was connected to this sofa. So we were interacting, putting our hands out, waving, and it was waving back to us. So we knew it was definitely there. And this was going on for over the hours, you know, and it just stayed in the same spot. But what was happening was this battle between the spirits in the space. So the old man hated people. He just did not want anybody around in his space. He wanted his home. And then we had this sofa spirit that was battling with him over this space. And that's what was creating the poltergeist activity, because there was so much negativity happening on this spirit realm. You know, we're talking doors opening and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, Gethin was telling him, you know, this isn't your place. This isn't your time. You are dead. Whether you know it or not, you've died, and it's time for you to go on. And he said, Poppy, it's your turn now. You've got to pass them on to the light. And I just went, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. What do I do? And Gethin was just like, you know the talk. You know how to get them through. And he was like, remember, there is a life beyond the gates or the light. There is, you know, there's a life beyond that of peace and love, and that's where you've got to direct them. And I did direct them, and it was such a warming feeling, and it's almost like a relief feeling. And in my mind's eye, I could see them holding hands, these two spirits, and walking forward. But it's like and then ever since then, that house has been still. There's been nothing.
I've had this conversation with a few people about the light and wanting to get into the light and what have you. And, my belief is that, there's a lot of different personalities in this world, in the physical. So you get in the spirit world as well, on the spirit side. And you get a lot of, why is he not been into the light yet? Why is he still hanging about?
Mm-hmm.
What's your theories on why spirits kind of remain here?
So I think sometimes there is still an emotional process to go through. So when I was channeling the gentleman, he was not only angry, but he was really sad and alone. And so once we started reassuring him that there will be somebody there with you on the other side, you will never be alone on the other side. You will be surrounded by love and you'll be surrounded by peace. And it was almost like he gave in and there was this moment of acceptance. And so I think sometimes there is that fuel of emotional spirit and also unfinished business. I do believe in unfinished business. I don't know what you think, Rowena.
I think my thing to raise at this point would be whether it was an intelligent haunting or a residual haunting, because obviously you can't make something that's residual go into the light.
Of course.
It's just repeating an activity that it did in life or that they did in life. And I know there's like stone tape theory, which would say it's like the building or the landscape has held on to this memory and it's almost like a video playing over and over and over again. Whereas if it was intelligent and therefore you're able to communicate with it, firstly, do they realize they've actually even died? Because they may not. And secondly, you would have to, I think you would have to, secondly, sorry, they would want to have to pass on, because I don't think you can make a spirit pass on. I think you can encourage it to, but I don't like this idea of exorcism being, the solution to a spirit, because I've heard of cases where exorcism has made the whole thing a lot worse. And I would say that was because you cannot force something to move on. If it doesn't want to move on, you're just going to make it angry. So I would agree with Poppy that you can encourage spirit to move on, and you suggest that there is something for them. But equally, if that chap in the case that she was talking about just now had decided, no, actually I'm going to stay here and dig his heels in, I don't think you can make them go. I just think it's got to be a decision that they make.
I totally agree. Laura's saying regarding heart attack, when I had my heart attack, the hospital will tell you, right, go home, rest up, don't do anything. And I'm one of these people that cannot sit still. I've got to be doing something, and Laura was helping Sarah, my wife. When I came out of hospital, she said, don't you move off that couch. You need anything, I'll go. She was really Nurse Ratchet, don't move. That's what the Nurse Ratchet, that one, that's what that was about. I think Laura was just catching up, basically. But no, I totally agree. Wait a minute, get rid of that. When Sarah and Laura both think I've got ADHD, because I can't sit still, and I'll start one task and then go and start another one and get back to the other one later on, but I'll do something else in between they two, and stuff like that. I disagree. It's they've self-diagnosed me through Google, probably.
Yeah.
But I said that to Evo husband. I said that to Evo Hunter. To Craig. Well, to Craig. See, as I say, Laura's sometimes comedy a wee bit cryptic, come back to his Marvel knowledge. I don't know what you mean. I get the a-hole, but I get that. But know that I said that too. But no, I've watched people on YouTube, wherever it is, and they say, right, your time's come, Spirit. It's time to move on. Go into the light. It's safe in the light. There's, but I believe when we pass over, I would hang about several different reasons why we hang about. It's usually probably unfinished business. I believe that other people, they want to keep an eye on their family, basically. So that's why they stay here. I think other people are apprehensive about what's on the other side of the light. Maybe they've been a bad person in this life. So when they pass over, well, do I want to go into the light because I don't know what's there? Other spirits might feel, well, if I go into the light, can I come back again? Or is that me stuck? So they tend to kind of stay. But no, I believe that, you can open the door for them. You say, well, there's the door, but you can't force them to walk through it.
That's something else that we talked about with the spirit, is that when you cross over, you don't have to be gone for good. You can come back through. And I don't know, if I would be more reassured if I was a spirit, I think, to hear that.
So I've got a question for you, right? Sometimes I'll get random questions pop into my head. Okay. I think Laura has that too. That's Laura's husband saying she's got that. No doubt you girls get. I'll just get random questions. I've asked a couple of people this, and asked Rigger this, and he got all complicated and scientific, and I'm not like that because my brain just doesn't work that way. So you've got a spirit that passes over, right? Say passes over in the year 2000, for example, and my wires get caught in my chair. It happens every show. I've got a wire that comes down and it always gets caught between the arm and the cushion of my chair. So sometimes when I move my head, the wire stays put, I see you've got a guy who passes over in the year 2000, right? And he goes over and he goes into the light and he meets, his mum, dad, whoever, relatives that passed before. And he's in the light and he says hello to them, whatever it is that happens there. But then he comes back to see what's happening with his family, basically. Now, to this guy, pardon me, he's not been there all that long in his mind. Mm-hmm. But in the physical world, it could have been about 20 years has passed. You with me so far? Mm-hmm. So you hear about these people that, maybe go to mediums or whatever and say, oh, my dad passed in 1995 and it's now 2015 and that's him just came back to me. Why has he not came back to me before? Do you think maybe that's why?
It's one of those things, isn't it? Because we don't know how the other side works. We don't know how time works. We have a theory that maybe the paranormal is all on one level. Are we living in a time where the past and the future can collide in one? When we see, like Rowena said to me, when we see UFOs, are we actually seeing a time slip into the future? When we have past ghosts come through, are we having a time slip to the past? Is it that we don't have these layers of paranormal, but instead it's all on one timeline? So nobody knows how time really truly works after you're dead, because you got to be dead to know, right? I don't know. I can't answer that. I genuinely don't feel like I can answer that because we just don't know. I don't know what you feel, Rowena.
I feel like you could go into a very long conversation about quantum physics right now, and I unfortunately I am not Dr. Sam Beckett of Quantum Leap, which probably doesn't know, I don't expect, because she's probably too young. No, she's probably too young for Quantum Leap.
I remember the character. I've got his face in my head.
Yeah. So it's Scott Bakula, Quantum Leap, worth a watch, Poppy. Okay. But the idea that we can travel through time, but that he goes back, but he looks to the people around him like the characters of the past whose lives he goes back to change the lives of these people. But he is essentially like a ghost, just kind of traveling through time, taking on all these different personas. And so I'm sure that you could get into something that has got some sort of science to it with regards to whether or not ghosts could be related to time travel, which I think, like, you know, time slips, time travel, whether time goes in a circle and just keeps getting played over and over and over again, and then some things imprint more on it than others. I think there's so many different theories as to what things can be. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've slightly gone off the subject by talking about quantum leap, and I'm really sorry about that.
That's fine. That's totally fine. Just what you were saying, Poppy, about, you know, paranormal, you know, being kind of on the one level. We did an investigation one night at Loud and Curtin with the Ghoul Gang from Southampton, up Rosie and Emma, for the Ghoul Gang. They're coming back up the end of this month for a week. But we got asked to clear EVP through the Necrophonic. We got asked, are yous ghosts? We'd never been asked that, you know, in all the investigations we've done. Are yous ghosts? So that set us thinking. I like your girl's opinion on this. That set us thinking: is someone investigating us for them to
Who
say,
knows?
"Are yous ghosts?" And they used the word ghosts, which suggested to me, and I might be wrong here, but spirit's a more modern word for when you're investigating. Ghosts are a kind of older kind of word, if that makes sense. Are yous ghosts? So it started us thinking, is somebody here for the future investigating us as we're investigating whoever's here for the past?
That's
That
really
makes sense.
interesting. That is really interesting. And it's kind of in line with how sometimes I think about, you know, seeing spirits and ghosts and whatever. But we were talking to a gentleman called Kedrick Olson from America, and we were saying, like, why is it that when we see spirits, they're always in sort of like period dress or time from the past? Why is that? And he said, well, I can't remember everything, but it's something along the lines of that spirits are capable sometimes of shifting their form to be more recognized. So there could be a chance that we might see somebody, I don't know, dressed in a plaid shirt and some jeans, like in a modern era, but they're actually from the past. And I'm just like, my mind is blown at all these different theories, to be honest. There's just so many tracks that you can go down. And I love hearing everybody's insight, but yeah, it just
Because I think one of the questions that we discussed among ourselves was, if a spirit is older, is it more see-through than a newer spirit, or have people seen like absolutely solid cavemen, but then you might see a really ghostly Victorian? So we were saying, you know, and we were saying, if they were just stood in the street with you, would you even know they were a ghost if they weren't that old and see-through?
I've been asked a few times, have you ever seen a ghost? And I'll say, well, to be honest with you, I don't know. Because what does a ghost look like? You know, there's that many, and Hollywood plays a big part in it, you know, images of what a spirit actually looks like, you know, solid, transparent, white mist, dark mist, whatever you want to call it. So I don't actually know. You could be, as you said, you could be standing next to somebody, you know.
I just think there's so many different forms of energy, and like you're saying, like depending on the time frame of that energy, what is the appearance going to be? You know, it just I don't know, it completely blows my mind when you start thinking about all these parallels You can go down so many rabbit holes.
I remember telling you, Poppy, about that place I used to go to in Stratford upon Avon, and some people came in and said, oh, you know, the guy you've got stood outside in a Victorian dress, he's getting really into costume. He showed us into the shop. He sort of said hello and good morning, and it was lovely to meet us and everything. And they were like, he's brilliant. And the guy was like, we don't have anyone stood outside in Victorian dress. But to these visitors, he had looked so real and so solid, they wouldn't have even thought that he wasn't there. But he wasn't.
There's two stories. One, Hingenbrook House. I don't know if you've heard of Hingenbrook House. Oliver Cromwell stayed there for a while with Mark Egerton. He's a tour guide on it. And he was telling me that one time there was workmen in the building, and one of them was looking out into the garden, and they saw this lady in, you know, Victorian dress, you know, the long dress with, you know, the tight bit and all the rest of it, walking across the garden. And the guy says somebody worked it. He said, well, I saw that lassie, you know. And so there's no do it in the garden. So I just saw. She says, what you've seen is the Green Lady or something they call her. But he says, no, this was an actual person. This was an actual woman. Wasn't it a ghost? He says, no, that's the Green Lady. She's been reported so many times. There's also another story in Glasgow, the Victorian Infirmary in Glasgow. It's an old hospital, dates back to Victorian times. They renewed it, they rebuilt it all except this one section, which is the original Victorian building. But there's a very famous story about a doctor who was called to one of the wards one night. It was one of his, you know, emergency calls. He was on his way to the ward, and this man stopped him and says, "Can you tell me how to get out of here?" And so the doctor gave this guy directions to the exit. The doctor went down to the ward, and lying on the bed, he passed away, was the guy he just gave directions to.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And this guy, you know, he didn't want publicity, right? And this guy was one of the top doctors in the hospital. And he says, you know, he just went pure white, and he just looked at the guy lying in the bed. And the guy had no reason to lie about it or anything. They just gave this guy directions how to get out of the hospital, you know. And so, spirits. I think I've seen in Loudon Cut, we were investigating one night, and I looked over to the left, and it was like a millisecond. I thought I seen a little girl peeking out from behind one of the trees. But, you know, I looked, she was there, and then I looked back, she was gone. So I don't know, I'm kind of 50-50 whether I did see her or not. There was a couple of times in our old house, I was lying on the bed watching the TV, and see somebody passing the door.
Yeah.
It just, you know, and I was the only one in, and it was like that, and they were gone. Twice that, you know, that happened. So, you know,
I think
it does.
Something similar like that happened to me in a hotel once, and I was with my friend, and we both seen like a shadow figure go from the TV into the bathroom. Well, gone out and, you know, dinner, drinks, whatever, wasn't too inebriated. Got in the shower, and next thing you know, I had a really solid shadow figure. It was almost in the shower curtain itself. And I'd locked the door. I'd completely locked the door. And I didn't remember hearing the door go or the lock or anything. And I froze on the spot because I genuinely thought, because it was that solid, that somebody was behind. This is like the stuff of horrors, like genuinely. It was terrifying. And I thought someone was stood there. And so I ripped open the curtain. There's nobody there. And that was it. I just quickly put all my stuff on, got out, and I said, we got to leave. We got to go. I don't want to sleep in this hotel room. And I ran downstairs to, you know, the hotel reception. And I said, please, can you move me? Please just move me, because I'm not sleeping in that room. And they just looked at me, and I said, I don't care what you believe, but I know what's just happened to me, and I am not sleeping in that room tonight. So got put in the family room.
It would have been even scarier if they turn and say, "Oh, you mean room 10 where the man died?" I think, see, that being on reception, I think I'd have done that, to be honest. I'd have said, was that room, a man committed suicide in that room. That really put the big Jesus up you. But it's when you get, it's when you think you see something and you need to question yourself. Did I see that or did I not see it? But it's better when you get, we did a building with Spig, with Rigger, who was in the chat earlier on. It's an old school in Glasgow, dates back to the late 1800s. And we've done a few investigations there, but one night there was 10 years there, and we came out what was one of the old gym halls in this corridor. And as soon as we came out in the corridor, we heard a little girl saying, "Hello." Clear as it, and everybody stopped and just turned round. And we all just kind of looked at each other. What did you hear there? Because I heard a little girl. And spite there was genuine tea, everybody was genuine, but the fact that it must have been about 10 years, and everybody, it's when you get a situation like that, then you need to, and everybody, hello. And we're like,
really bizarre.
Did you hear that?
Am I allowed to ask you a question?
Of course. If it's my bank number and PIN number, you're on the plums.
My question is, in your investigations, have you found it harder when it is a child spirit to kind of deal with the situation? Like, are they less likely to realize in your experience that they have passed on, or to understand what's happened to them if they are sentient, intelligent? I don't know what you would want to call it. Or do you find that there's not much difference between dealing with child spirits and adult spirits?
This is just my opinion. I think dealing with child spirits, I think it's harder for children to accept that they're passed on, to know they're passed on, because they've not really lived, they've not experienced, as adults, we know about the paranormal and life after death, but kids, I mean, we've done a few investigations, and you get the sound of kids playing and laughing and joking, and I think it's harder for them. They don't actually know that they're passed on. Does that make sense? Whereas adults, you can communicate better with adults because they realise, okay, you get some adults that don't realise they're passed on, but
at least they've got the awareness of a second life or a life beyond death. Whereas children, I'd suppose they have to then place their trust in complete strangers that have invaded their space, essentially. Yeah.
Does that make sense, Rena?
Yeah, I just think as a mum, I would find it harder now if I was dealing with a child spirit, whereas when I was a kid, seeing a kid wasn't a massive deal for me, because it was like, oh look, a little girl skipping across the landing. It did make me sort of like go, and you kind of you look at it again and think, no, that she's not actually there. But I think as a child, I was far more accepting of a child ghost, let's say. Whereas I think as an adult, I would find it harder because I'm a mom. I'd feel, like that instinct to help and be a good parent and, like look after them when you can't really. I just don't know how I would find it now. But I know that in sort of like the medieval times, for example, let's go to my favorite history period, child mortality rates were huge. The whole mortality rate of a nation went down because kids died so young and so regularly. So, if you're looking at a particularly old building, the chances of you coming across a child are probably quite high.
I'm more, I say wary, I'm not wary, I'm more kind of aware of child spirits now on it because I personally, I lost a daughter. She was just under 6 months back in 1992. I lost a court death. And every investigation we've done, we've always felt there's been a little girl about, but we've never been able to identify her. So it was maybe about 2 years ago, we were doing an investigation at a wee place called Stairs, a wee village in Ayrshire. And a couple of teams suggested to me, why don't you see if it is Donna? So I says, if this is you, can you tell me what toy I put in your bed every night? And we get nothing back. And I said, can you tell me then what colour was it? And we got back very clearly green. And I asked twice, I asked a wee while later, and it came back again, green. Now, my daughter had a wee Rexy for Toy Story, the dinosaur. I used to put that in her bed every night, and Rexy's green. And about a year later, we were doing Loudon. I did a lone walk around Loudon Kirk, and I felt my sleeve getting pulled, 2 tugs in my left sleeve. There's nobody there, I was there myself. So one of the investigations we did in the future, Rosie and Emma were there as well. I says, can you tell me who pulled on my sleeve that time? I was walking here. And it came back very, very clearly. It was me, Daddy.
Oh my gosh.
And that that ended me.
Did you find that a comfort though, to know her presence was nearby?
I did, because you always kind of wonder, are they still here? Is she still about, and then when it came back, green, I thought, well, that was me kind of 80%, but then when it came back, clear as a bell, it was me, Daddy. But, that was 100%. So with child spirits, I'm always, I want to contact them, but you don't know how you're going to react. Does that make sense? That day in Stair, nothing freaks me out or phases me, but that day in Stair, I says, right, I need to take 10 minutes. I need to go and, take myself out of this for 10, 15 minutes and just sit down. So it did kind of knock you for 6. So with child spirits, I kind of more weary now because you don't know if it's, the wee one I caught, the wee, no. But I do believe that they're always around us.
Oh, 1,000%. And, with me doing mediumship and everything, I know that they never leave us. I know that they're always with us, no matter where we are, what we do. Okay, they might not be with us constantly, but their presence is with us, and remembering them keeps them alive in spirit as well. And so, yeah, when I was doing the moving on and communicating in the last case, I could feel my brother to the side of me, and I could feel his physical presence. And I suppose when you know a person's specific presence, that's what I could feel, was his arm around me, and I knew my brother was there with me. And I don't really get too emotional about it because I find a comfort in it, and I sort of feel as like a matter of fact, like I know full well that these spirits are around me. And I think it's wonderful that we get that chance to still have spirit around us, comforting us.
I get told a long time ago that, if you get somebody who's passed, their mum, dad, whoever, and you want to talk to them, and all you need to do is think of them and they're there. They pick up and that's another question. I'm just a weary time. You've nearly been on tours, but here's a question for you. We've all had times in our life where we've had a problem, whether it be money-wise, family-wise, and, maybe a deadline of some kind, and we cannot, we sit and we rack our brains trying to think of a solution. Say it's to pay a bill, for example, maybe the deadline's Friday, we'll sit with pen and paper, cannot work it out, but then at the last minute, something pops into your head to solve the problem. Do you think that's maybe, somebody in spirit giving us that wee nudge
Yeah,
to help us out?
when I was growing up, my mum always said that spirit has got a way of poking you in the ribs. And I've lived my life with that sort of knowing. I think that they can help you onto a better path. But I also believe that everybody, to a certain degree, has got some kind of spiritual awareness, some kind of spiritual beacon. But some people just are more closed off than other people. Like I said, I'm fortunate enough that I grew up with a very open-minded mother that, you know, would talk about all the different experiences. And again, I come from a Romany Gypsy background, and so my family has got gifts. You know, we've got healers, we've got mediumship. My nan could read auras, and so yeah, like we're very open people, and I think when you are open, you're more aware, and when you're more aware, you sort of have these messages come through to you, and maybe symbology like feathers and things like that are gifts from our guardians, or you know, people that have passed. And but I think you do have to have a certain amount of awareness, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Just a white feather, you know, that's happened to me up in the town centre. You know, it's a pedestrian precinct, and I'd been at the optician. I came out, and it was a really nice day. I was standing in the mirror. I was lighting a cigarette, actually, to be honest with you. And I looked down, and there was a single white feather floated down and landed between my feet. And you look about because you're expecting a big seagull or something like that, you know, you kind of, but there was nothing. But this wee white feather landed right between my feet, you know. So
talking of feathers, my brother's passing was not too long ago, and my sister told me, one of my older sisters, she said, oh, I had 2 white feathers in, you know, by the back door in the garden or whatever, and she said, oh, I think that's from my brother. And I said, funnily enough, the days previous I'd had 2 black feathers by my back door. So I feel like we were sort of having that connection of feathers and gifts, and it's just comfort, isn't it? You like to believe in something, or we do.
You like to know. What were you, Rowena?
I have to say, I'd never ever thought of, when it suddenly occurs to me, perhaps I'm getting a message from a loved one who's helping me out. I think I'd kind of done some reading years ago that said your mind files things like a library, like, you know, the old kind of library cards that they used to have in the long drawers. I can't think what they were actually called. The Dewey Decimal cards or whatever they were. I think I therefore had assumed that you retain this information without necessarily realizing you've taken it in, filed it away somewhere, and your brain suddenly pulls it out, like one of these cards from the big long wooden drawers that I used to really like when I was a kid, that I can't remember the name of. And it's like a
index cards.
System. Sorry?
Were they not called index cards?
Yeah, they could have been index cards. It was a Dewey Decimal System, wasn't it? So you would look up the kind of book you wanted, and it was all in number order.
I think they were called, I might be wrong, I think they were called...
No, I think you're right that they were index cards, but it was on a system where you used to have to find the code that then related to the code on the spine of the book.
The drawers were about that size, weren't they? Pulled the drawer out.
But I think, and when I was at uni, I remember when I was at uni back the first time, which was a long time ago, we had stacks. So you had these like big shelves that were on these big like rolling system, and you roll. It was like undoing a safe, but the whole shelf moved. I think I just assumed your mind was a bit like that, and that you could store an awful lot of information in there and not realize it's even there. But I quite like the idea that maybe you get a message from a loved one. I think I've believed to have received those kinds of messages when I've slept before, like had dreams about people, and particularly people who have passed, and I dream about them, and then you wonder if they're giving you a message because you're dreaming about them. But again, the brain is a very strange thing.
Oh, it's a very complex thing, but no, I see that. I just think it's spirit, because I mean, obviously, you get the old tale about we've all got free will, and the powers that be won't interfere and stuff like that. But I just like to believe that maybe at the end of the day, some gives you a wee nudge, and you think, well, why did I not think of that 3 or 4 days ago? I've been sitting worrying for X amount of days. How did I not think of that before? But somebody's gave you that wee nudge, that wee. Do it this way. So they're always kind of keeping an eye on you. Here's a last question for you. I was watching a thing the other day, and somebody's saying, you shouldn't talk to headstones. If you go and visit a headstone, say your mother and father's grave, whatever. I did it last week, Father's Day. I went up to my dad's grave and put flowers down, and I was like, "How you doing, you old bugger?" I took my daughter up and said, this is the wee one, blah blah blah, and I'll see you later on. Hope you're doing okay. Do you think that's nuts?
No, it's a way we connect to our ancestors. I'm sure Rowena can highlight this a bit more for us, but throughout the ages, we've always somehow honored our ancestries or ancestors that have died, and part of that is to talk to our dead, whether that's through seance or mediumship or whatever it is. Go into a headstone and being there in the physical presence. There is nothing wrong with that. I am open to all kinds of different grieving. I think in modern day society, we are so closed off and taboo about grieving that it needs to change. We need to take a step back, go back to like the Victorian practices of grieving, where people would do whatever to get over their losses. And well, not so much get over it, but process the deaths. And I think that's fine. I honestly think that's fine. I have no problem with that. What about you, Rowena?
I believe that talking to things like somebody's headstone or somebody's memorial plaque, it's sort of a way of it is a way of connecting with that person, because it's the only physical thing you've got left of them, essentially. Years ago, as Poppy briefly mentioned there, we practiced ancestor worship. We would have had places within our communities where the bones of our ancestors were still on display, and I'm sure that there were some societies where they actually used to leave the sort of the bodies of the dead, to be embalmed and viewed essentially as these people were parts of our community, and come and pay your respects to them. And I know that you get those images of medieval tortured cages hung on trees where the vultures picked their bones and all that kind of thing, but it was still a way of people saying, look, this is death, and this is a message to you that you can gain from, this is what happens to you when you die. There wasn't so much taboo associated with it. It was used as a warning as well, obviously, by hanging them in the cages from a tree and allowing things to eat them. But it didn't seem to have, there wasn't so much fear over a body as there is now. I mean, you look at the way we deal with our dead now, we tend to cremate them, and so that's it. The whole thing is
clinical.
gone.
It's very clinical.
It's all gone. And it seems, like you say, to actually I know that my nan, for example, decided not to have a headstone. She got cremated, and then she wanted to be sprinkled in the garden at the funeral home. And wanted that because she feared that one day people would have forgotten who she was and they would stop visiting her grave, was pretty much the reason behind it. And I can see how that would be worrying, but then I know that equally death is all about the mourners, not about those that have died. So, you know, if you don't have a headstone to go to and you don't have a memorial plaque to go to, then that person who's died has left you with no way of honoring them, I suppose. So I think talking to a headstone is quite a nice idea. I like the idea that someone would come and talk to me. But
hopefully that's not for a long time. But
I do currently. I talk to the dog and the cat instead, and yeah, and you
a lot.
But they don't talk back. She talks back, but the rest of them don't. No.
You're quite lippy then, Poppy. Quite.
I wouldn't say I'm lippy. I can talk the hind leg off a donkey sometimes.
I think we're as bad as each other. Yeah.
But I talk to our cats. We've got a Jack Russell as well. He's just turned a year. And my wife said to me a couple of times, who you talking to? So I'm talking to the cat. So you talk to her for a person. I says, well, I mean, earlier on, Laura came here earlier on, but we've got a cat port that I go out and have a cigarette. I was out in Pepper, one of your cats was there, and it was raining for a change. And I was saying, I need to cut that grass again. And Laura came into the car port and said, who are you talking to? I said, I'm talking to Pepper. You were talking about the grass. I says, I know. I said, tell her I need to cut the grass again. I know they don't understand what we're saying.
I think they understand a lot more than they let on.
Oh yeah, my dog the other day. I've got a brand new carpet for the Ghost HQ, and she just put one paw down, and I went, "Don't you dare! You take that off right now!" And she just very slowly took it back, and I went, "Yeah, you understand me. You know exactly what I'm saying to you."
You love them, but I mean, our Jack Russell, he's a pain in the neck. He's a constant dynamo. But you still. Sarah was away on holiday last week with the wee one, with her mum and that, and so I was here myself with him. And Sarah, Tuesday night, she flew and said, "We're going to bring Paddy down to the caravan tomorrow and leave him overnight." And I said, well, fine. So I took him down last Wednesday, and I came back here, and I was totally lost because there was nobody here. And Sarah said, "Oh, you missing Paddy?" I says, "Aye. As much of a pain in the neck he is, you actually do miss him when he's not here. Because I'd nobody to talk to at all. Scott, no mates, kind of. But you know what I mean. But Laura says, "Why are you talking to the cat about cutting your grass?" I said, "Because she's sitting there. So tell her I need to cut the grass." Okay. I know, as I say, I know.
I talk to dog about everything.
Well, exactly. And some people think you're nuts for doing it, but at the end of the day, it also enforces that bond between you. Because they're sitting there watching you, talking to them, so they're getting attention, basically.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
My dog is led behind me sighing right now, by the way. He just let out the biggest sigh. He's like, yeah, she's not talking to me.
Mum, give me attention.
Yeah.
Aye, you've been talking to somebody else long enough, Mum.
I know. It's his bedtime. He's annoyed now.
All right,
I think it's coming up for our bedtime as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to. That's over 2 hours. I'm going to wind it up there, ladies. But I'll keep a hold of you for a wee second after we come off. So, where can people find you if they're looking for you? And I don't mean the bailiffs and stuff. I mean general public.
So you can find us on our 4 channels. We are on pretty much all of them. So we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And our handle is the red box here. It's always Paranormal Project Come, squished together, no spaces, and that's where you can find us. And then Rowena is What is it? Langley History UK.
At Langley History UK.
So go and give them a look up, folks. Hopefully they'll want to come back on because they're not finished yakking yet, you know. So I'm going to. Would you like to come back?
Yeah,
No,
I'd
it's been horrific.
No, you're not
No.
coming back, Poppy. It's just me.
No.
It's just me. You've got me, but not Poppy.
No, I'll
I
be
don't-
back. I'll be back.
No, it's too tough, Lenny. She's coming back. We're not getting rid of the lippy one. Sorry. You know.
Rowena will drag me along by the ankles.
I will. Yeah, I'll sort it out. Don't worry.
As long as you're not walking down the street yourself late at night in the dark.
Yeah,
I'll refrain from doing that.
please
I
do.
think you should.
Yeah.
Please. I think you should. So I'll keep a hold of you just for a wee second after we come up. So a big thanks to these two young ladies, and go and give them a look up everywhere that they've said you can find them. Really, you will not be disappointed. But we're going to wrap it up there tonight, folks. I'm back on tomorrow night with Kimberly Richards. Not Kimberly. I better get her name right, wouldn't I? Kimber. Sorry, Kimber, if you're watching. But that's tomorrow. So a big thanks to these young ladies, and you will be seeing it again because Gwen's going to drag Poppy back on. So we'll say good night just now and enjoy the rest of your evening, folks. Thanks for watching. Bye. Bye.
Bye.